breaker plate wear, how to diagnose and repair it. I bet most of you are like, what's a distributor breaker plate? And yeah, I can understand that question because most of us don't know. But if you have a distributor in your Mercedes or your Bosch distributor, like a Volkswagen or Porsche or whatever, and you have a set of points, those points ride on a breaker plate. And that breaker plate, I've actually moved this out of the distributor a little bit, but that breaker plate lives inside the distributor so that the points can rest on it. And what the breaker plate does is where the points attach, I'm going to try to set this up properly. Where the points attach, you actually have two parts to the breaker plate. You have the inner part, which uses screws that go through the distributor case to hold it on, right here and right here. And then you have the main part, or the points plate, which is what the points attach to. Now, does this sound a little advanced? Well, yeah, there's going to be some content on this channel that's going to be above some people's heads, and I'm probably going to get the talk in the comments about how come you don't do simpler things. Well, because this is actually a big problem for those of us that want to resolve these issues, who have cars like 280 SLs or, any fin car that is points, or a Ponton, or an early 115 series car, especially cars that have the cast iron 051 distributor. It's a good idea to understand what happens with these breaker plates. So the first things we're going to talk about are symptoms that your breaker plate might be worn. These include loss of power, ignition breakup, and misfire at high RPMs. That means that you're accelerating away, you're under heavy vacuum, and under low intake vacuum, you're banging through the gears, your engine's pushing 4,000 to 5,000 RPM, and you get this misfire, and at about 5,000 RPM, engine runs out of steam and starts to fall flat on its face. Now, this is typical of a breaker plate situation where the inner diameter of these breaker plates has gotten to a point where, instead of rotating and rotating nicely and working smoothly together or whatever, play has developed. I'll show you where that play is as soon as I get these things to fit together. See this pin right here? I'm trying to get it aligned with this hole. This is the vacuum advance path. Now, I have already machined and repaired this plate, but if you take the inner part of the plate out and hold it with the outer part of the plate, sometimes you'll find that there will be play that develops in here, where this part will move around a little bit inside this part, and that's not acceptable. You can't have that. Now the question is, why can't you have it? Well, because it does some weird crap. It changes your point gap. It causes the points plate to walk on the shaft. So instead of the points plate actually staying put where it belongs, the points start to move, their gap changes, and you get ignition breakup. And then you go, fall flat on your face. Now, a lot of people erroneously try to correct this problem by installing an electronic ignition system. Newsflash, the electronic ignition system still relies on this breaker plate because it's got to have something to attach to, and the car still doesn't run as well. The electronic ignition will hide some of the wear in the breaker plate, but if you have a worn breaker plate, then there's no point in trying to fix it. Now, how do these breaker plates wear? Well, it's because this guy, the vacuum control for the ignition advance or retard, actually attaches to the plate. If you'd like to know where it attaches right about here using an inverted screw. But as this thing actuates, as it goes in and out, it pulls this plate towards it, and then it goes away from it. It goes in and out, in and out, in and out, just like that. And miles and miles of it doing this will cause breaker plate wear. Now, these breaker plates were sold by Mercedes at one part, but then after that they went to Bosch, and now nobody makes them. And people see that they're worn and they're like, what a hopeless situation. What am I going to do? This breaker plate has like a millimeter left and right of play. It doesn't move in a linear path, which is something that we should be very concerned about. And if you adjust your points to compensate, well, they may look good when they're static or at low RPMs, but when you're at 5,000 RPM, they can't tolerate it. So you start to get a misfire. So what do? Well, the first thing you have to do is take them out. So you basically remove every little screw from the distributor housing. You pull the vacuum advance. You pull the screws for like the things that lock your cap down. You pull your screws for the condenser holder. You pull all that stuff out. By the way, I'm aware that that distributor needs an O-ring. So sealing O-ring. So once you get all that stuff out, you can work the breaker plate out because it's held in like a little basket with a screw on each side. And the screw cannot be longer than this. Like, it's got to be flush with this. So if you lose a screw, it's got to be a real short little screw with a 4mm thread. Preferably a flathead screw. And when you find play in here, the idea is to make this bigger. So what I usually do is I find a socket this is actually too big of a socket, but I find a socket that's about this diameter, just a little bigger. We're talking about a hair bigger. And what you want to do, like, this is too loose, but you want to drive it through the plate. You want to drive it through because you're going to expand the hole. Now, when you expand the hole, you need to watch for cracks in this lip. But for the most part, once you expand the hole and the thing develops a tight fit again, you have to do it very carefully and slowly. The next thing you have to do is you have to adapt this hole to where these two fit together and have a smooth fit with no play. So these have kind of a smooth fit with no play, but let's say it's too tight and I can't move this easily, because the vacuum actuator needs to be able to pull it open and closed. Let's say that that's not working. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this type of file and I'm going to go through here in the inner diameter. I'm going to start twisting to ream this out just a little bit so that it no longer binds. And then what you want is when you put it back in the car, there's a pretty concise snap you can hear. It just goes snap. The two fit together so well. Look, they're supposed to fit together so well that they're held in with gravity. See? In theory, this should drop out through the bottom. I'm actually going to try to take this off, but the goal that you're... Man, I guess that's what happens when you take your time machining something, but you want them to move smoothly, but you also want them to snap together so that there's so little play that they literally have to snap together. But then again, they can also be moved easily in the space where they're supposed to be moved. So that's part of the trick, actually. Let's make sure I get this at the right angle. By the way, these holes are sometimes not perfectly round, so keep that in mind too. Okay, so once you reassemble this and put it in and gap the points and everything, what you should have is a car that runs smoothly, makes power all the way up to 6,000 RPM and change, like a good Mercedes engine, and won't have weird dwell readings or timing readings or weird point gaps or whatever. So the takeaway from this is I want you to understand that this is a repairable part. Doesn't mean you have to throw your distributor out or get an electronic ignition. A lot of the time, if you go back with genuine Mercedes points, a genuine Mercedes 80001568101 condenser, which is the good German-made condenser, you'll find your engine runs like new, just because of this little tiny repair with an oversized socket and some files. And about an hour and a half to 2 hours of your time to repair the distributor on the bench. So please like, share, and subscribe. Tap the bell for notifications. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, especially if you're a Patreon. And if you have something to say about this repair, leave it in the comments below. Thanks.